Welcome to the Disciple of Yeweah. Please hit the likes and the subscribe down below in your right-hand corner. Muchly appreciate that. We're sitting here in our studio, and this is the part 2 is from yesterday's series that we promised we'd be doing. So part 1, we really dealt with the rapings and things that are transpiring in Gaza with the Jewish women. And it's heart-wrenching. Part 2 that's involved in that is more local streamed, and it's also very dear to my heart. But what brought it into this was because a local ex-counselor who every time she's involved in something, and she's always been promoting, nothing but venom comes out of her mouth. We have a situation, of course, with homelessness here. And because some of the encampments previously were in her area, they managed to move them out. And now they're repairing with, hundreds of thousands of dollars repairing those sites. But it's more important to her, like the venom that comes out of her mouth. I'm sorry. I'll pray for her as I continue to do. But this woman is a snake. And pray to God that she does not run for the mayor position down here, because that would be an ultimate nightmare. However, it wouldn't put it past her, because she likes the limelight, and she's devious, and she's always been about the rich. And unfortunately, if the Lord ever were to finally get her, I'm sure there would be 7-fold, 10-fold demons come out of that woman. The heart spews nothing but venom. And remember, please, if those likes and subscribes are important here, because we're any proceeds that we can build this channel up to, and you can donate, will be going to the poor, the homeless here, the homeless abroad in missionary fields. It's important. We need to do the Lord's word by spreading His word and feeding the people. It's doing both, hand in hand, the need. But anyway, to continue on, she gets into an interview locally and states, her, because she's representing the South End. That's called the rich community in here, if you know HRM, and doctors, lawyers, that type of upper class. And don't get me wrong, there are good people within there. Just happens to be also a bunch of people within that group, because it tends to be within the rich that like to wash their hands of the lower, and they don't think the lower class should live. That's the mentality, and you can see it in Sue Utek very, very well. If she had her choice, I'm sure she'd stomp out and crush these people. Anybody that's in need. I say, woe unto you, Sue. The Lord will deal with you and your types. When all you can say is, we must make sure this doesn't happen again after we spend all this amount of the taxpayers' money. Well, if you were so concerned about the taxpayers' money, 3/4 of it, what you guys do behind closed doors, wouldn't have ended up in your guys' pockets. Not doing anything for the people but building condos instead of affordable housing. That's where your heart is, lady. People like me see through you. And sorry, I'm not I'm a follower of Christ, but I will always battle the wrongs that are being done. When people are being wronged, and I'll always defend the lower side that can't defend themselves. That's my job when I see the outrageous wickedness that's done unto them, because that was Jesus' heart. Yeshua. Who did He connect with? Was the poor, the people that were in trouble, the prostitutes, because they could actually connect. There was heart there. You couldn't find heart within the rich, because of the money. They were lost in the money in their items. So for you, Miss UTech, I say, woe unto your actions. God will deal with you. I pray to God that He wins your hearts. Send somebody. I'm just not Mr. I'm not one of those type of followers of Christ that tries to pretend this doesn't affect me, because it affects me, and that's why I'm so stern on it. I can't put on a front. Oh, Happy Mary, sit in a pew, because that's not how Christ expected His people to be. He expected them to be doers and to find a way to help feed the homeless and work with the needy. That's where His heart was. And to go to go straight up against the wickedness of hierarchy mentality to crush the lesser. And I will go with that movement. I won't sit in a pew. Yes, I go to church, but I won't sit in a pew and just everything's Happy Mary in my little world and ignore what's going on around me, because that is unacceptable. Anybody who wants to claim that they are a follower of the Lord, our Christ, our Messiah, you can't just sit back and just everything's hunky-dory. I mean, if you don't want to get up and get your hands dirty, at least put the money into doing so. And let people like myself go in there that are willing to get our hands dirty. But for you public leaders or ex-leaders like Sue Utek, how dare you? We can't. All you could be concerned about is how your little neighborhood looks. You, ma'am, need your world to fall apart around you. You need to be somebody in their shoes and spend 5 or 10 years out in the cold and the elements, and then see how it is, and see how it feels when nobody gives a damn about you. How would it be when you have to live in the elements? How would it be? It'd be a different story, wouldn't it, Sue? But you don't understand it. You can't comprehend it because you have too much, and you don't want to share, and you don't want to help people appropriately. Don't put on the little, oh, see me do something type of game with me, because we have followers that are so-called Christians or Christians that do that because they don't want to get their hands, or they want to be seen doing. That's not what Jesus expects, and Jesus warns against that. It's having a true heart. Go do right within those communities. But for you to say, we can't allow that to happen again, who possessed you with the right that you have ownership over those public properties? Who gave you that authority? No one. You don't own it. And none of your dumbass counselors own it. Or your politicians. Yahweh created this world. You put these people, because when I was growing up, there were no people on the streets. Amazing how that happened. Because, again, your true desire to push people that were hurting to the streets, that they don't deserve a shelter. You got that far with it, and that's why there's such an abundance of it. With people like your mentality have created this issue. Now here's the thing. There's a lot of good people, and I want to get to this because there's a few prongs involved in this situation, because I can understand. Because, like I say, you got your venomous individuals you put on camera along with yourself, UTech, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Your day when you have to, the Lord puts you in a position that you have to live that way. We'll see who's talking that way. But anyway, and oh, you're so scared. Well, yeah, okay. There's the other avenue. The government's created the problem within our country. They came from different cities, a lot of the homeless, and don't ask me why they chose Nova Scotia being one of the big places, but now it's abroad in the country because there's still people coming up. But there was the first abundance of them all wanted to head here. And here's the problem. I got no problem with if we did this right. When this started, it started as a problem with kids running away from home or kids being kicked out by their families. So they decided, this particular group, that's how it seemed to start, the first group of them. Um, and they just decided to travel across the country and come to Nova Scotia. And they were a group of people that didn't want to take the opportunity to get off their butt and work. It was like they decided that society owed them something. That's not correct. But that's where the problem began. And here's the problem: what the government could have solved this. Instead of them heading to certain communities like Nova Scotia or HRM, anybody who were in those, and they were kids, teenagers, when you find out if they're still in that pattern, I don't care how old they are at that point, send them back to the city they were born and let their local government deal with the issues with those individuals. That's the problem. They piled up here, and I don't know why. But then we got into a situation where all government across this country, and it seems to be kind of global too, made it a bigger problem. Because then the good, honest, lower class community who were working for a living and worked hard, were hard workers, you pushed them out to the street with them because of your cold and callous hearts. You made sure there was no other way. That's why I say you take, God help us if you run for mayor down here, because we know the other crook, Savage, is stepping aside when his term is done. But God help us if a snake like you gets in. I don't know who's the bigger snake between you and Savage. God help us. But anywho, let's pray to God that that never happens. We need some caring people in those positions. That's why I almost think that it's time for people to rise up and not violently do something, but overtake public office and do it. Start from the grassroots to get actually honest people that really want to take care of their communities, because that's what's needed. You can't find a political party in Canada now. Canada's not Canada, that we knew it, that we were proud of. I'm not proud of this nation anymore. What it's done to its people, it's ridiculous. It's cold, a cold-hearted place. It's not even our country, and it's nothing against bringing people in from other nations, which became another problem. You can understand it in certain situations, but however, this nation forgot that when those nations take people in, they have rules. And if you and I were to live there, we follow their rules. They have their belief system, and we don't interfere with it. You can have your own beliefs, but you stay quiet in that nation. That's what we needed to do here. This is our nation. You'd never know it. Canadian-born people are so outnumbered now, and it's nothing against the people that the government's brought in. However, the government did it in an evil manner, of course, because evilness was behind it. It's always going to be within the rich mindset. So they handed these people the luxuries, made them, hand out government money, that they're given money to live here. We know because they're given more advantages than Canadian-born people. It's ridiculous. And so you end up seeing that they're coming out, and somehow they're getting the stores, they're getting the money to build the condos. And that became more important than if there were good people within council or government. They would have stuck with what the necessity was, public housing. But no, they pocketed the money. Greed. Made sure they had their portion and then ran with it. Even after getting federal funds, that was totally for public housing. And instead they pocketed it, Mr. Savage, right? And your crew. And I'm sure in the time of UTEC being there as well, we know her heart's greed. So the money was pocketed, and you had the condos going out, and that's all you're worried about, the rich living. So, this is going to be a crisis in the future, just like it was spoken over in Israel, warning us, these victims, warning us. It's a problem for us now. We paid the consequences. They're being raped and stuff in this war because Israel is God's nation. You can't chalk it up any other way. And we are his people, and his people are being attacked. So the dragon, which is Satan, he uses people like Suyutek and those venomous people in Hamas and Hezbollah. He uses people. He uses instruments that are willing to spew hate and push out hate on the victim. So it's quite simple. This is supposed to happen. Um, he's going to go after what's God's, and that's why Israel's always chosen to be attacked, because no matter how biblically, and this is biblical, it all attaches. I mean, sorry, the Creator created all this, and Lucifer had to be jealous after we sinned in the garden. So anyway, to get back to it, instead of that being done, where we went wrong again, and we could correct this problem. The government tries to make it look like they're doing something by probably last, I don't know, and I'm just guessing here because this didn't exist in my day when people had drug problems. There was no help for them. But in the last, I don't know, 20 years, maybe, let's say, and it could be more, less, maybe 30 years. They put in a program of trucks coming into the community and medicating, giving them, well, it's not really medicated, it's just another drug, so they can stay high. You would think that instead it would be something they would do practically to get them off it, because the meth is to counter the meth. But what they didn't understand, and that's how dumb, no foreseeing and looking into the situation, the problem in that area. And this is where the problem comes into and like I say, I will be going into the tent encampments. And it is a tricky place to go, because we have a lot of great people that were the working class that ended up having to live in them. And you or I could end up there, because it's a paycheck to paycheck situation where it's just beyond. The cost of living has been pushed up so high and skyrocketed, and the government's doing nothing to keep it in check. Beyond the last 25 years, it's just been outrageous how fast it's jumped up. But anyway, those people are mixed in, and then they got this little group of those people who are the traveling Woolberries and junkies, and we have to love them. I know, been there. I had my issues in my early days. Thank God the Lord healed me, but I never had dealt with meth. That wasn't even in existence in my day. But this meth thing is a scary thing. So the problem is, you got these encampments, and then you got a little group pocket of them in these sites that are the ones you do. So Sue has a point, or Sue's rich people have a point, because it's actually all people do. It is unsafe, because you got these little low-class junkies that are within these encampments that are the drug dealers and the thieves, and they'll lift anything from you. That's all they're about. But you get into talking to them, and you actually figure out, and that's what the government's too afraid to do. Instead of sitting back pushing buttons, that's why they always pick the wrong thing to do. And you find out this is a pocket of people. We're talking about this myth group that's within the encampments that actually gives the black eye to the rest of the people that are really in need. And yes, they're in need too, but their intentions are all wrong, and they have no plan on changing. So what you have to do in that circumstances, you don't just send a truck that feeds them a drug, because all you're doing there is buying them time. Get talking to them, and they have no intention of stopping the meth, these meth heads. So they're going to jump all over what the truck is putting up, because it keeps them high, and I guess from withdrawal of meth, their bodies ache, so they try to avoid that. So it buys them time until their next hit, and they'll make it clear when you keep talking to them. And it's a scary thing when you do talk to them, because whatever's in that, and we know it's a bunch of chemicals. It's doing major damage to the mind of these people. They don't have a clue what they say. They don't have a clue you could see them. in one position before they were high and then see them go high and they don't have a clue what they've said. And that's why they said they can commit crimes and there's no conscience, because it seems like this drug destroys the conscience, the heart. It destroys any empathy, because all their drive is feed me the drug, and they'll do anything for it. This is scary. So instead of sending a truck and enabling, why don't you set a proper program? You want to clean up the streets? And I pray to God, and like I said, Miss UTech, how dare you? Because I can guarantee you wouldn't survive 5 years out there if the shoe was on the other foot, and you would want to be able. And this is God's land, and you don't own those public places. You need to shut your mouth and stop your spewing into venom. And any day of the week you want to meet, I will take you on in public to bring you down. People like me will stand against you because we know your true heart, and you're just a rotten snake. Totally allowing yourself to be used. I don't know what happened to you as being a younger person, but it seems to be a poison that gets into these people that are full of greed. But I assume something happened along the way, because the amount of venom you spew against your fellow human being is ridiculous. You couldn't survive a day in their shoes. But if the government wants to wake up and stop pretending to do something, you want to do something right? Build the shelters, and I don't care how you do it. It's time to pull back some of that crap. And how in the world do we give our own land away to people that are from away? And it's nothing against the people, because you're creating government officials. How do they end up owning these buildings, and we allow them in here? Because it's the councilors and the politicians want their money spilled by these people, and they get that. See what greed does? You give away your own nation. Now, I agree with what was said with a lot of them victims. That's why they spoke up. They said, it's coming to your nation too. The states, and we're next door neighbors to the states. This country is so pathetic now in where we stand. I don't even have any respect for us as a nation. We're not who, when I, took my oath military-wise, we're not who we were, where you believed in it. We gave this country away, and we are going to have the same problem. That's why you've seen the protests. There's good people that came from away, but there's bad people that came too. You have terrorists within Canada, and there's more of them than there are Canadians. So I do believe those victims from Israel, we have serious problems to be concerned about. And you know what? It does need to be remanded, because once you put the camera on and you see those protesters, which have no right to protest, and they just spew their hatred towards the Jews in those protests. And if our government had any type of quality to them as a human being, they immediately would have taken those tapes, said, oh, we gave you citizenship here. Now we know what type of group you are. You have no right to come into this nation and spew venom. You want to do your spewing of venom, you do it in the nation you came from. So that showed. That's your group that put up these protests. They're filled with terrorism and hatred. Jihad. Kill the Christian people and that type of thing. That's their mentality. Wipe them out. Wipe out the Jews. We got a serious problem here, people. And we better get together and get on the right track and get it, because you better start equipping yourself, because the Jewish women that spoke have hit the nail on the head. It will happen here next if we don't wake up, and it's a matter of time. And you need to counter it when you see Like I said, you didn't see the Jews going around attacking Palestinians that, I'm talking about living in Canada. You didn't see that. But you sure did see the Palestinian movement, which, again, were they Hamas people? Either way you chalk it, they're connected. They're one group. They can try to swish it whichever way. You have the Hamas representing you as a government type of form, or Hezbollah. So don't give me the garbage. But anybody who was in those groups, they have no rights to do that in another nation. Any responsible government would ship them out automatically and revoke citizenship. And that's what should be done. Otherwise, we're going to pay the price for that. Just like those poor Jewish women who, like I said, the so-called NATO, which doesn't exist anymore. It's filled with half terrorist countries, which is not NATO anymore. It's not whatsoever. It's a joke. It's a joke. The UN, the United Nations, is filled with terrorist countries. And that's why they couldn't accept the atrocities that were done to the Jewish women. Just like the Holocaust, always looking for a reason to denounce anything that happened to the poor Jewish people. And that's a move of the dragon, Satan. So be aware, if you're a follower of Christ, Yahshua, Yahweh, the Holy Spirit, you need to come together. And we need to be strong. Because Yahshua and Yahweh didn't ask us to be weak either. That's why there were many people like King David who were soldiers. Christians aren't just meant to be in their pews, happy, married, love, love. Love is a wonderful thing. We want that. But you got to fight for it. Sometimes you got to fight the evil. And we better be ready for that. Because that's society. He didn't expect us to be stepping stools and allow the groups that have their own gods and want to destroy Yahweh's people and his nation. He didn't expect us to stand by silently and do nothing. Want to get wiped out? That's how you get wiped out. So I pray. And if the government wants to do something correct, take away the trucks that you're sending in to give these people that are addicted to meth. Take away the trucks, because that ain't the answer. You almost need to start a program. You want to build a site, you put those, and you force these people because they're causing it. And, I can actually see that group of people is causing violence in neighborhoods. They're thieves and they're drug addicts. They're good people, and the Lord wants to get to their heart. But you got to come up with a better way of cleaning them up. Otherwise, you still got the same problem. But then we just feed and enable them with our government's moves. You want to correct this? You help the people that are there, the true people that are desperate and were honest workers, and you give them shelter. They're still working, a lot of them, going to jobs from these campsites. It's sad. But get rid of you have to clean up this group and wipe, and how the authorities know who the little drug dealers in these groups are. Put them in prison. Get them off the street. You do something about it instead of sitting idle. The drug addicted that are addicted to meth, create a center. Since you've made it apparent that there's no, you force these people to the streets, well, then you force them into a place to get healthy, and you don't do a short-term program. You make sure they have no access to drugs so they can clean up, and you keep them there for a long time until there's a plan that they can do something normal in society. That's what needs to happen. You don't enable it. But we do pray that God gets, direction is here and camps these innocent people from the destruction of what the world wants to put on them. So thank you for joining me. We'll talk more. We'll see you the next. We just had to hit these topics. So use your heart and use your mind and do what the Lord directs you to do. God bless you. And for those, come to Jesus. He will accept you. Just follow. In Jesus' name, God bless.